So you talked about Proverbs 14:4 and how that was an encouragement to you while raising children. Will you explain why that had such an impact on you?
Yeah, so I'm the sort of person who really likes order and predictability and uncluttered surfaces in my home. But raising children, especially several small children at one time, can make predictability, order, tidiness not a regular thing you can come to expect, right? So I wanted to have a really thankful heart for the blessings I was surrounded by, even if all I seemed to do was wipe noses and faces and change diapers and cook and clean up the next meal and just kind of start that cycle over, add some laundry in there. Um, and so that was a struggle because I wanted to be thankful, but I just would get really irritated by the clutter. And one day during my devotional time, Proverbs 14:4 really struck me. And the version I was reading said, "Where no oxen are, the manger is clean, but much increase comes by the strength of an ox." And, children do cause messes, but they will grow to be a mighty force for good if God would bless in that way. And I wanted eyes to see beyond the messes and continual cleanup operation that I felt like I was in the middle of at the time. So by God's grace, one day while that verse was on my mind, I just turned that verse into a little jingle just to sing it and keep it constantly on my mind. And I apparently sang it quite a bit because my baby at the time, which was my fifth child, I think she thought it was her song, because if I would start to sing it, she would just sort of wiggle around and dance like it was her little theme song. And she wasn't really the one making the messes. It was the four older children. But if you think about it, if you're a farmer, you could have a very tidy barn and feeding trough. It could be beautiful, pristine, but it would mean that you don't have an ox there to do the plowing or harvesting of your food. If you have an ox, you get a lot of necessary work and help from that ox, but there is the side effect that you're going to have a barn and a feeding trough that's not going to stay clean and going to need constant attention. And so it's the same thing with young children. It just takes that long-term perspective, because with an ox, you have maybe the seasonal work you get out of your ox, but with your children, it's a 18, 20-year project from birth to when you maybe are seeing how God is going to use them to impact the world. So moms of young ones, take courage. When everyone's under 5, you are doing most of the physical work that needs to be done. But as your children grow, they take on more chores, and you'll be amazed at how your children can multiply your impact. It didn't take long before I was caring for the baby and someone else was making lunch in the kitchen, and someone else was doing the laundry, and someone else was out mowing the grass, and someone else was preparing a meal for someone who just adopted several children. And, I could never do all of that at once by myself. And, there were a couple times I was like, wow, think about it. Like, by God's grace, I have been multiplied, but it doesn't seem that way when everyone's under 5.